This week's episode is brought to you in partnership with Zero Procure, who are here to make procurement simple, offering great value and quality for products and services, all for zero cost. And what business wouldn't want that? I am delighted that their support will now help keep this show accessible and free to listen to wherever you access your podcasts. Please get in touch with them for a chat. Just click on their link in the show notes or visit their site at zeroprocure.com/podcast. Welcome to Hospitality Meets with me, Phil Street, where each week we take a light-hearted look into the stories and individuals that make up the wonderful world of hospitality. Today's guest is Matt Townley, Regional Operations Director for Dakota Hotels, an all-round industry champion. Coming up on today's show, Matt reveals that he likes renovating people.
I remember one day after we'd renovated David.
Phil is humbled by Matt.
Well, I feel like I want to give you a round of applause, man. It's a hell of a journey. It is a hell of a journey.
And Matt gets us wondering what he did to leave him like this.
And to this day now, we look back at that moment and I'm going red actually talking to you.
All that and so much more as we chat through Matt's fabulous career story so far. Matt has terrific energy for hospitality, something that we do talk about, and he has built himself a wonderful career so far. To this day, he is a positive force for hospitality and we are very lucky to have him. A huge thank you to him for giving up his time. We're here each week telling the stories of the amazing people within hospitality, so please don't forget to give us a like, share and a review on whatever podcast platform you're listening. It really does make a huge difference. Enjoy.
Hello and welcome to the next episode of Hospitality Meets with me, Phil Street. I've been super excited about getting today's guest on for some time, as he's absolutely one of the great personalities of our industry. His career has taken him through some very recognisable hotel brands, including De Vere, Principal, Malmaison, and now Dakota, where he finds himself as the Regional Operations Director. I am, of course, talking about the awesome Matt Townley. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks very much. That's to be alongside some industry titans that you've interviewed and done podcasts with before. That's a very nice welcome. Thanks very much.
Oh, you're a titan in the making, mate. Absolutely.
Yeah, not yet.
Yeah. I don't know what point do you become a titan? That's because there's legend as well.
Yeah.
We've had some legends on, but is titan higher than a legend?
Yeah, I think so. I think hopefully today, when we go through sort of the journey that I've had, I can probably allude to some titans that I've been very, very sort of fortunate to work alongside in the last sort of 15 years.
Yeah, nice one. How are you anyway?
Really well. Can't complain. It's raining in Manchester as usual.
Great, as usual.
It's been quite nice, but yeah, I think that the token joke about rain in Manchester, we had to get that in somewhere. But yeah, really well. Business is really strong. The two cities, Manchester and Leeds, are performing really well, so can't complain at all.
I had heard a rumour that it's grim up north. Can you qualify that or not?
Being a Scouser, I would definitely disagree with that. But you know, there's some dark days in Manchester, especially when Manchester City lift league titles and bits and pieces. But I'm buoyed today by another Liverpool victory last night against Aston Villa.
Oh, you're right. Good.
We're still in the title chase and still chasing that quadruple.
Indeed, I'm definitely not going to make this podcast about the title chase, but I'm a Liverpool fan as well. So yeah, we're still in the running. I don't hold out much hope, but anyway, one game at a time.
Indeed.
Yeah. So where are you recording today? That's a nice looking room you're in.
Yeah, indeed. I'm in the boardroom in Dakota, Manchester. So I split my time between Manchester and Leeds in my role. Manchester is the sort of flagship of Dakota. I opened this hotel in 2019 and sort of it's the biggest revenue generator and biggest profit generator in the brand. Therefore, you have to really sort of keep your eye on the finger on the pulse in Manchester.
Yeah, got you. Well, we'll definitely come on to Dakota through the midst of this chat and learn about what you're up to and what you've got going on. I remember actually, because obviously I'm a recruiter, so my first contact with you was an attempt to headhunt you. Oh God, years ago, but you weren't having any of it because you were very happy where you were, and that was great. But we've kind of loosely kept in touch, and I just like your energy for this industry. You just seem to be exactly where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, I think. First and foremost in the podcast, I'm your biggest super fan, Phil. So I was really looking forward to this today. I've listened to them all, so some really impressive ones, and certainly, I think energy. We can talk about brand, we can talk about energy, and I certainly believe that energy, it's synonymous with hospitality. Hotels are living, breathing animals. With a lack of energy, they become flat, and ultimately, energy is fun. So hospitality is about having fun, Phil. It, we have to have fun. We have to inject energy at every corner we turn, whether that be in the kitchen, in housekeeping, front desk, concierge. Energy is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's all about the overall experience, isn't it? It's not just about the guest experience. It's about
Indeed.
everybody's experience that comes into the
Yeah.
business. But great, right. Well, let's go all the way back then. Let's start where. What was the first moment where you thought I need to go and work in hospitality?
Yeah, so I think, Phil, I'm one of these sort of boffins that knew from sort of day dot I wanted to be a hotel general manager. So I think
Right.
that's really, I knew straight away. I was very fortunate at the age of 16 to go and work for the Queen's Moat House Hotels. You'll remember them,
Yeah.
in the Liverpool branch. And I often reminisce about that hotel in Liverpool being sort of the darling of the Liverpool industry at the time. It had been a Holiday Inn prior. It had been placed latterly under a compulsory purchase order for the Liverpool One Grosvenor project.
Right.
So it was just a magical place. So I was 16. I'd gone straight in as part-time work while I was finishing off, I think, A-levels at the time, running breakfast shifts, etc. And I was super lucky, Phil, because what happened was once that compulsory purchase order started to sort of really take shape and you saw the development that was going to be the sort of capital culture year in 2008 in Liverpool, but we're talking sort of 7 or 8, 9 years before that, you started to see lots of the full-time team members leave and go and sort of, they knew the hotel was going to be closed and essentially demolished.
Right.
So it just opened up a whole world of opportunity for me at the age of 16, 17. So I found myself, I remember it at Christmas time, sort of, I must have been 16, 17, and they were short of a conference and banqueting supervisor in the function suite, which held sort of 500-600 people. So at 17, I was half running a banquet for 500 people,
My
which was
God.
absolutely crazy at the time. But
Yeah.
I also found myself sort of in a concierge role at the age of 17. And listen, we all know concierge and the Golden Keys brothership. It's absolutely incredible, and that really opened my eyes to hospitality, and I really cemented my love for the industry there. And I often look back and think, what did I get from that role? And I look back at times. Grand National's always one that sticks out in the memory. Grand National is obviously huge for Liverpool, the Grand National meeting, and there wasn't really many other competitive hotels in Liverpool at the time. So we'd have all the horse race, all the horse owners and the riders and the jockeys, staying in the hotel. And I just remember working alongside a middle-aged guy, we'll call him Terry. God rest him, he's passed since.
Yes.
And
Do
Terry,
you need an actor to do his voice?
yeah.
Excuse me.
Listen, Terry was he's an industry legend in Liverpool, certainly, and he was a career waiter, and he taught me everything I knew about waiting tables. And as a 16, 17-year-old, honestly, Phil, I remember, don't tell a taxman, but walking out with thousands of pounds in cash tips because you've got racehorse owners chucking money around, and it was just
Right.
absolutely brilliant and really really cemented my love for the industry. In the sort of last year, I'd started university. I attended Liverpool John Moores University and I studied tourism and hospitality. So in my sort of first 2 years of university, I was part-time in inverted commas at Queen's Moat House, Liverpool, but I was actually in a full-time salaried role. So I was bouncing an early shift off an afternoon lecture and then a morning shift
Right.
off another afternoon lecture. So I worked full-time in my first 2 years, which was challenging to say the least, but great fun.
Well, that sounds like it's kind of almost the best of both worlds because you're getting some theoretical knowledge within you, but then you're able to go out into the real world and
Yeah.
put some of it into practice.
Yeah, and I think that's critical. So I've had about 7 mentees from Manchester Met University over the last sort of 6 or 7 years, and the biggest downfalls some graduates have these days, they come out with a piece of paper but just don't have any experience. And I think the way the industry's moving just now and the recruitment opportunities that we've got, experience is absolutely critical. So, and
Yeah.
I stand by that.
Yeah.
From there, I moved on because the hotel closed. So that experience was really key as it took me into the next role.
Yeah, I relate to you on the getting the experience element as well. I had the opportunity to go and study a fourth year degree, but opted to just take the 3 year degree and go out. I just felt that I needed the experience now. Plus, I was getting a little bit bored of academia, to be honest, and I just
Yeah.
needed to get some practical experience. And then you look at the people who stayed behind and did the 4 year degree, and you're already a year ahead of them
Yeah.
in the midst. And I'm not saying that that's the only path, but certainly I think it's critical. I think early doors to identify getting the balance right between getting some qualification behind you if you can. It's not essential, but then backing it up with practical
Yeah, it's
experience.
certainly it's absolutely not essential, and I often talk to young graduates now that are just about to finish and embark on their careers, and I often say I look back at my degree and I did quite well. I was quite lucky that Liverpool at the time was about to take on this capital of culture in the medium term future. So it was all about urban tourism and looking at tourism. But I always say to people, I probably didn't use my degree till about 5, 6, 7 years later when you really sort of communicating professionally and talk and in boardrooms, that's when it really came to the fore for me. So yeah, experience absolutely vital.
Yeah. Did you have a subject that you really excelled in over all others?
I was terrible academically, Phil. If I'm honest,
Right.
I enjoyed. Listen, I enjoyed university. My parents are both educated to degree level in geography, both geographers.
Right.
But I always had a vision. I wasn't the son of a hotelier, or hotels don't run in my family. So I had a vision. So once I finished my A levels, which I absolutely despised that type of study, I knew I had a vision. So I knew I wanted to be a GM. I knew I wanted to take on hotels. So by the time I got into a classroom and studied a degree, I knew exactly what I wanted. So I really applied myself in university just to
Right.
get to the end and get the piece of paper.
Yeah, but that's the secret, though, isn't it? You found something that you absolutely want to do, and
Indeed.
this is part of the jigsaw puzzle that will help you get there at some point down the line. So it just feels like it's part of your purpose, and that I need to apply myself as much as possible. Where
Yeah.
where did where did that vision actually come from? Where can you remember a moment where you went, like, did you see a movie or saw somebody and went, I want to do that?
Yeah, interesting actually. A lot of people ask me this. We grew up. I've got two siblings, so there was three of us. Money wasn't, we didn't have a huge amount of money growing up. So hotel stays were quite romantic and quite, listen, far fetched. We didn't go and stay in hotels every other month. It was I can only remember a handful of family holidays. And so the memorable family holidays were in cottages in Scotland and going out with the deer first thing in the morning. But I can remember some really key sort of moments being in hotels, and one of them moments was bizarrely in what was De Vere St David's Park, which is in Ewlow, North Wales. Which, listen, it's a village hotel now, but this is probably going back 25 years. And I remember sitting in the restaurant, and Dad kindly had let me have a steak this night. So that's I was probably about 11. And given the fact that I'm 37 next month, it was probably 25 years ago. So that was where it all started for me. And I was very lucky. My next door neighbour when we were growing up had an office in the Queen's Moat in Liverpool. So it allowed me to bridge that gap, get some experience, and off I went. But I knew from probably the age of 15, I wanted to be a hotel general manager.
Right, got you. It was the movie Pretty Women that brought me. Bear with
Oh,
me on
really?
this, yeah, because they were in the Beverly Wilshire, and I remember it was the
Indeed.
first time that I had a vision in my head around. I want to go and be that guy that's on the
Yeah.
front desk looking after everyone. And then ultimately, I'd cut to right. I want to own a hotel that's got 100 bedrooms, and I'd started doing the maths around it and all that sort of stuff, and that kind of sent me on my hospitality journey. I took a few missteps along the way, but in any case, it's mad, isn't it, where the visions come from? Sometimes it
Yeah.
can be from seeing something that you just thought, yeah, or sometimes it's the experience itself.
Yeah, yeah. I always think, Phil, as well. Hospitality. We're simple creatures. So if you've got bags of common sense and you just want to look after people, you can go very, very far, very, very quickly. And essentially,
Yeah,
I set about that early doors in my career.
yeah, brilliant. So after QMH has been shut down,
Yeah.
where did you go next?
So I had a couple of really interesting years. So QMH shut down. I then had an opportunity to to move to the newly opened Radisson SAS, as it was in the time, in Liverpool, where I stayed just for about a year while I finished my studies and really got to grips with what I wanted to do. I spent a bit of time in wedding coordination, which was an eye opener. It was brilliant, great experience, and then split half my time in F&B as well. What I quickly realised though, moving there, Phil, was that Radisson was a huge business, and whilst QMH was sort of national, really, UK national, Radisson, the international piece was huge. You did feel like a smaller piece. Where I'd come as a young guy from Motos Hotels and being quite a, well known in the hotel to this other hotel in Radisson that was quite big, and it just opened, and there was some very very senior people there. Had big impact on my career, but I stayed there a short time, and I was very very lucky to sort of backdoor it into Malmaison. So through my university lecturer, an opportunity had become available on the Malmaison graduate scheme, bizarrely in Liverpool. When that came across my desk, I jumped all over that opportunity. Normal interview process where I met sort of a significant guy in Scott Harper, who's now CEO of Malmaison and been there a very long time. But I think more significantly, I got the opportunity then to join forces with people like Robert Cook, Sean Wheeler, all who had huge impact on my career in them early days. But listen, I was probably 21 at the time, so I was young, impressionable. I'd certainly decided that my niche was in food and beverage. Malmaison at the time was all about food and beverage. That was the heart and soul of Mal. And yeah, joined Mal as a graduate in 2006. Liverpool opened in 2007. Literally, probably 3 years later, found myself in the first deputy GM role in Liverpool, stepping up in the same hotel, which was a huge challenge, if I'm honest. Stepping out of a peer group into managing them peers was difficult, but there was a great chap, Mark James, who was GM at the time, who certainly placed all of his trust in me. Great guy, Mark. And yeah, it gave me that opportunity. Sort of did that deputy GM role in Liverpool for 18 months and then moved to Manchester, which at the time, flagship property, huge new investment in food and beverage right on Piccadilly. And yeah, took the deputy role in Malmaison in Manchester, and that was 2011. So it's a long time ago, actually. It still feels like yesterday, but I think when I reflect on my time at Mal, what did I get from Mal was a huge depth of knowledge in food and beverage. I studied wine after I graduated to quite a decent level. Gained so much experience in the operational departments and and as deputy. And I think importantly, them mentors that you pick up along the way, and we'll mention more mentors we go through today, Phil. But there was none better than Sean Wheeler and Robert Cook at the time.
Yeah.
And they're still absolutely fantastic. That really helped me along the way. And you'll see now the next move was stimulated by Robert Cook as well.
Right. Yeah. Well, the importance of mentors cannot be understated. They really can make or break, like what directions you head off in, what you learn while you're there under their mentorship or whatever. And that I suppose goes internally and externally, the people you pick up along the way that are happy to give you the time.
Yeah.
Well, how old were you at this point in time? It sounds like you're kind of still mid-20s.
Yeah, I was young. I left Malmaison in 2012. So yeah, pretty young and green, dare I say.
But a lot of, I suppose it's a sporting thing that they always used to talk about. If you're good enough, you're old enough, right? And
yeah, listen, I was 25. I'd been deputy GM in 2 Malmaison properties, one of them being the flagship at the time. I found myself at 25 years old thinking, I'm ready to be a GM. And actually, the next move was a critical one for me. And leaving Mal was an absolute draw. It really upset me at the time. But Robert had gone, Sean had gone, and I had the opportunity to go and join forces with James Stewart, who was at Mottram Hall, just gone into Mottram Hall as managing director. And Robert had gone as CEO of De Vere and asked me to come across to join Mottram as resident manager, which, I was 25, no more than 26 at the time. And I found myself running this resort. I mean, there was a renovation project that we embarked on right at the very beginning, so sort of early 2012. And it was a bit of a defensive spend because De Vere at the time was owned by Lloyds Bank, and it was a defensive spend to raise the value of Mottram Hall, to align it with the Cameron House, the Belfries, the
Right.
Slaley Halls, in order to offset the businesses, but Lloyds to exit left. So yeah, it was interesting. It was maybe first proper renovation. I'd been through a little bit of that with Malmaison, but so renovating this resort and then repositioning this resort as sort of the best resort in the Northwest, essentially, was the strapline. Huge trajectory of learning. You walk in there on day one, you've come from city centre properties and you think you know a little bit about food and beverage and service and this, that, and the other. And then you come head to head with James Stewart, who I would describe as an industry titan, who had been at Mottram years before as GM, was now in this MD role, and in placing his trust in a 25-year-old Scouser moving to Cheshire to run a resort alongside him. But listen, you're talking. I walked in there and I remember overhearing the conversation about the green speed, and I'm thinking, green speed? What's green speed? I'm not a golfer, but we were lucky to secure the ISBS Hander Senior Open. So again, huge footfall onto the resort for the golf tournament.
Yeah.
And this was all learning for me, Phil, and I'll touch on learning later on. I was learning every single day. I'd never run a big spa, standalone spa. We had to get into the community, James and I, and really sort of embed what the new Mottram was going to look like. And that was a huge learning curve for me, because ultimately you cannot have a members spa, club, gym without engaging with the community and the locals. So James always, and he was a stickler for it, 7:00 Saturday morning, we were stood on the first tee talking to every single golf member, and that will never ever leave me. It was a huge learning curve for me. Much more fantastic property.
Yeah, and one moment in life, right, in terms of whereby you take the time out to go and do that, and you're building relationships with people who are going to be the kind of the backbone of your membership.
Mm-hmm.
But two, that kind of flips onto them where they're like, well, look at how much these guys care about this, and that sticks with them forever, and they know that they've trust you then, that you actually are there for them, and that you've got their backs and all of that sort of stuff, and that's how you build the foundations into something magical.
Yeah, I think it's probably privy to note as well, when we went to Mottram Hall, it had a few very, very challenging years, dare I say, in a very polite way. So it wasn't just the members. We walked into Mottram, and at the time, Mottram Hall was delivering 145 weddings a year. So I'll let you do the maths, Phil, but if you divide 142 by 52 weeks, that's plenty of weddings a week. That's quite a lot of weddings, and obviously all generally come in them summer months. So what we had to quite quickly is to rewrite the strategy. And what you were seeing was, 145 weddings, fantastic. But coming in and just destroying the ambience and destroying the spa experience, the golf experience, the golf socials. And so we had to quite quickly make a big decision to sort of cut the wedding business in half, essentially, and to really then drive that overnight spa trade, which is pretty lucrative, the football trade, which is also lucrative. Mottram Hall hosted Germany in the Euro 96, so it did have a history of, it had a history of football teams. And when you have a resort and you have all the moving parts, you've got a couple of restaurants, a couple of bars, a big conference suite, dare I say, a championship golf course, 18-hole golf course, you have to ensure that each of those little areas have their own strategy. And what Mottram was when we arrived was just a wedding house. And we were quickly looking at a very disgruntled membership, spa members that were disgruntled. So we had to be very, very quick and get into the community and understand what they wanted from Mottram Hall as well.
Yeah, I think the community element is huge. I had Jason Adams on recently up at Rockcliffe Hall. We talked about the very same thing, about how important it is. And not even just, I suppose, from a business perspective, but actually just from a local community perspective, in terms of knowing that you're part of your local surroundings. You're a massive part. You have a massive part to play in terms of the jobs that you can offer people and all of these sorts of things. It's, hugely important.
Massively important. And Mottram Hall, Phil, it's located near Alderley Edge, Prestbury, and it's one of the biggest employers in Macclesfield, which is just up the road, maybe another 3 or 4 miles up the road. And what you had to quite quickly realise is all of your team are coming from Macclesfield, and all of your regular guests were coming from Prestbury and Alderley Edge with high expectations,
Yeah.
a relatively affluent part of the world. So yeah, the community thing was big. And I think certainly the community thing, it comes easy in a resort because of where you are and the village of Alderley Edge is down the road and the village of Prestbury. But I think that can be amplified in city centres, and we'll certainly talk about that as we talk about what's happening at Dakota at the moment and the schools and the colleges that we've got relationships with. But yeah, Mottram Hall, I look back on that time as just absolutely fantastic time in my career.
It sounds like you were a kind of a sponge at this point. Every day, as you say, was just adding reams and reams of knowledge, which you can probably, at the time, you don't really appreciate, but you look back on now and probably say that it formed a massive part of what you've become.
Yeah. Plenty of mistakes as well, Phil. It's definitely worth noting. Plenty of mistakes. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's essential, right? And inevitable. And you can't go through every day being perfect. The as much as you can pursue that, there's always going to be stuff that comes up, right? I mean, there's always going to be, I don't know, that you were expecting a delivery of salmon for the wedding breakfast, and they send trout. These sorts of things that just happen, right? But I think the key thing for me about hospitality is that it absolutely fundamentally gives you the tools to recover quickly from things that go wrong.
Yeah. And I think something that I always say to everybody, honesty and integrity, the most important things. You're going to, no hospitality business is perfect, either guest facing or people facing. We make people mistakes all the time, but one of my mantras now is, just own it, just stand up and be the big guy and just say, look, we got this wrong, whether that be in front of a guest or in front of a team member. Sometimes we hire the wrong people, and the wrong person in the business can be a bit of a cancer, and you have to act on that really quickly. So, I look back at Mottram Hall as a huge learning curve for me, and learning is, we learn every day, Phil. That's a bit of a cliche, isn't it? But certainly some mistakes that you learn from, and unbelievable time in my career, And it was a wrench to leave Mottram Hall as well, I can be honest.
Really? Yeah. And don't worry about cliches, by the way. This is a cliche safe space.
Fantastic.
But well, I mean, that leads on nicely then. Leaving Mottram Hall was a wrench. Actually, leaving Malmaison was a wrench beforehand as well. So but I suppose it's part of the development that comes to be there's got to be a ceiling, I guess, of if you're still learning, and you're obviously still aspiring to become a general manager. So what happened next?
Yeah, so Mottram, like I say, was a wrench. I'd put down some roots in the area, in sort of the Cheshire area there, which was ideal for me at the time. I then had the opportunity, and let's talk about industry titans once again. So
it's not like you've not named any so far.
No, indeed. I then had the opportunity to go and work with David Taylor. So Hotelier of the Year 2018. No one better in the business at the time. Sean Wheeler had arrived after his stint at the Dorchester collection with Principal. So I'd gone to York for a short time to oversee the renovation of the Royal York, in preparation for me moving into a hotel manager role at what was then the Palace in Manchester. So in York, I teamed up with another industry titan, Stephen Carter, just name dropping there again.
Yeah.
Steve and I just had a real whale of a time in York, and what you can get from a Stephen Carter in a period of 8, 9, 10 months in York was just incredible. It really set me on
I can
the way.
Only imagine. He's he's been on the show, obviously, and
yes, indeed.
He's just one of these guys that makes you feel like we've got this. We totally got it. Like, there's nothing that can come up that I haven't seen before. So, which is obviously not the case, but that's the way he presents himself.
Yeah, certainly. And listen, I'm still in touch with Stephen. I spoke to Stephen this week, literally this week. Great guy, absolutely fantastic chap. But yeah, I had this opportunity to go and work with David, repositioning the Palace, which you'll know the Palace, Phil. It comes with the reputation of being one of the most challenging properties in Manchester. It was a £30 million renovation, of which there was, the outgoing GM chucked the keys at me on his last day, and that was that.
Good luck.
Good luck, off you go. And listen, it's like a rabbit warren. I remember one day after we'd renovated, David walked in, and as you do when you're looking at these hotels, you do a walk around. And a walk around to the palace probably took you half a day. Into the bowels, up to the top floor, right across the 4 separate buildings. It could take you half a day. And I'd obviously missed the corner out one morning, and I never forget David absolutely wiping the floor with me, saying, "Why haven't you walked this property this morning?" And again, a learning curve.
Yeah. Well, you'll just make sure that you'll never do that again, right? I mean, that is how you learn. Yeah. Totally.
But listen, it was a massive renovation. There was no GM in place at the time. I sort of took that on for sort of 8 or 9 months throughout this renovation, sort of managing contractors and rebuilding the team. And then Michael Pertl arrived, who's now with Jumeirah and he just left Jumeirah. He's just about to start his new job in London. Yep. And Michael was a real senior figure who'd come in to sort of take the helm of the palace and relaunch sort of principal into the UK. So it was launched from Manchester in the November. The property's huge, 400 team members, 300 bedrooms, 22 million turnover, in a real student corridor of Manchester. In fact, I think it's the busiest bus route in Europe, sits outside that hotel. Yeah, incredible property. Ballroom capacity, sort of 600, 700, 800. Biggest challenge, though, was 50% of the revenue came in food and beverage. So obviously, huge challenges managing payroll.
Yeah.
But yeah, just a magic property. I really enjoyed my time there as hotel manager. Michael Pertl, in terms of, talking industry titans, was the most detailed guy I have ever worked with. I'll never, ever forget writing the opening budget for what was then going to be Principal Manchester, which is latterly now Kimpton. It's been bought again and it's now Kimpton branded.
Yeah.
But Michael's attention to detail was incredible. I never forget, we were talking about writing a budget for housekeeping, and the hotel was challenged in terms of this, there was lots of step access, lack of lifts, etc., etc. And Michael made us walk the housekeeper's journey from the back door to the sign-in point, to the trolley, to stock in the trolley to the first bedroom, and made us quantify the time over the year, over the annum, that would take them housekeepers to do it.
Wow, yeah.
As non-productive payroll. And you know what? I'm still in touch with Michael as well. What a great guy. The detail that he just went into the most minute of detail. And again, something that I'll never, ever forget.
But that's massively important. I mean, it's hugely important when you're trying to deliver a luxury product, but it's important at any product that you go to that level of detail. And if you didn't know any better, you would be writing that budget then around, okay, so this housekeeper's got to do, 13 rooms in the space of however long, and that's it. There's no consideration to how long it's going to take for them to actually get to the first room in the first place and then restore everything at the end of it. And it's that attention to detail that actually is the difference between success and failure.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think the other thing that was a real Starwood Capital owned that hotel at the time, and what was really interesting is Starwood and the presence in the UK has grown dramatically over the last few years.
Yeah.
And probably the biggest experience I had there was dealing with them asset managers for Starwood and people like Cody Bradshaw. They wanted the hotel to be quite credible in the cities. So that's where in that hotel Principal, which is now Kimpton, they've got the Refuge, which was a huge cavernous space. And I think that was probably my first experience of managing different stakeholders. So again, we brought in two gentlemen who were very credible in Manchester, 2 ex-DJs called the Unabombers, Luke and Justin, to really curate the space in the Refuge. And we opened that Refuge, and honestly, Manchester just flocked. And one of the strap lines was "Come as you are," just come in whatever you're dressed in and behave like you behave. And it was a really sort of, you had this luxury Principal brand hotel, which was super luxury, and everything that they even had thought of every detail through the brand people. And then you had this Refuge on the ground floor, which, breakfast on a Tuesday would be 450. Sunday lunch would be 300.
Right.
It was regular on a Saturday. This restaurant and bar would turn over 75k in one night, and there was all kinds going on. There was a nightclub there. There was, there was events going on in the outside areas. So massive business to manage. Very, very, very big business, but absolutely great fun. Let me tell you.
Yeah, well, and again, you're getting new strings to your bow, right? In terms of thinking this way, and you could argue actually that allowing people to come to your property as they are is a luxury mindset. You're not trying to pigeonhole people into your way of doing things. You're saying, look, we've created this beautiful space for you. Come and enjoy it.
Yeah, for sure. What we have to remember is, again, go back to that community thing, Phil. Manchester is very diverse.
Yeah.
It's very inclusive as a city. You cannot ostracize anybody, or and Luke, one of the guys who curated the space, he used this term in an early interview, and he said, we are uniting the clans of Manchester. And I think that was a real masterstroke, because you'd be sat there on a Friday afternoon and you'd have a group of students in one corner, a group of businessmen in the other corner, a group of young women in the other corner celebrating the hen do, or it was so diverse, and that's ultimately what made it successful.
Yeah, and you created a buzz, and so a great place to be, great energy. Again, we'll come back to that word.
Yeah,
and yeah, fantastic. Sounds amazing. And again, you just keep dropping these Titan names into the mix, and I keep trying to get David Taylor on the show. By the way, if you're listening, David, if you're listening, David, yeah, absolutely. But all in good time. All in good time. I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. So there's many more people to interview yet. No, that's really cool. So you're a hotel manager at this point under Michael. And then how long were you there for?
So I was there for about 3 years. And it's probably privy to note here, I could have stayed in Malmaison and been a GM. Maybe, well, Scott will probably disagree with me, Scott Harper, but realistically, I could have been a GM. My next move at Malmaison in 2012 was to go and take on a Hotel Divine or a smaller property. But I made that conscious decision to go and do resorts and a huge city centre as a number two, to really sort of cement that experience. I knew what the destination was, and that was to be a GM. But all of that experience as resident manager, hotel manager, deputy general manager gave me so much experience across all the different types of hotel that I just felt ready. But when Dakota came calling, I knew that was the right move for me.
Yeah, the wonderful thing about that is, and this is a message that should get out a lot more, because I think people are generally in a rush to get to the top, right, as quickly as they can.
Absolutely.
But if you get there too quickly, and if you had taken that general manager job, I've no doubt that you would have been successful. But look at what you would have missed out on. Look at all of the other things that you would have not had exposure to, and therefore you would have been dare I say it, a lesser GM.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that, Phil. And I was in a rush in them early 20s. I was in a rush, and I wanted to be a GM yesterday. But I think that move from Mal to Mottram really matured me, and really sort of, you had to be commercial. The business was up for sale. We absolutely had to have a commercial edge. It really delivered a commercial edge.
Yeah,
sales and marketing really came to the fore there, because we had to deal with that. Probably when you were Mal, back when Mal was what it was in 2010, 11 when I was there, very much focused on the operation as deputy GM. The GMs took on all the sales, the marketing, and the commerciality of the business. So I think that move into Mottram was a really good move for me, a really great move. And then latterly onto principal, where the sum of moving parts is, I mean, you cannot imagine what the day-to-day looked like there. It was just so busy. It's great hotel.
Yeah, I can only imagine the stories, which maybe we'll get onto that. No, but that's cool. I mean, probably your day one at Mottram, you realised, holy cow, I've got a lot to learn.
Yeah, I did.
And you probably felt that again when you were at principal, like when you went. You've just done this wonderful spell with Mottram where you've learned so much, and then you walk through the door on day one and get the keys launched at you, and you're like, holy cow, I have to learn it all again.
But I think, Phil, pressure pays the mortgage, right? So if you don't feel pressure and you don't feel like you've stepped up, then wouldn't life be so easy?
Yeah.
For me, you should be performing a role that you want, not the role that you're in. And I always say that to my team now. Go and deliver the role that you actually want, not the role that you sat in now. Go and act like you're in the role that you want tomorrow. And that's something that I really took on. And again, we talk about learning. If you stop learning, it's time to move on.
Yeah, well, that's genius, that concept though of go and perform at the role that you want, because you're putting yourself in the shoes of this is where I want to be, so I have to go and perform. And it's something that I always talk about when I'm interviewing people, and I ask people that horrible interview question that people still ask around where do you see yourself in 5 years' time?
Yeah.
It's actually, I used to really despise it as a question, but for me, it gives me a real clear insight into whether somebody's actually genuinely thought about where they're going. And it doesn't matter if you don't fulfill that 5 year plan, because things change and stuff happens. But always look at where you would like to be in 5 years' time, and what's the gap in between of the skill that you have that stops you doing this job right now, and go and fill in the gaps. That's it. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. I think I was probably quite lucky, Phil, if I'm honest. I probably wasn't that intelligent to think like that. At the time when I left Mal and joined Mottram, I probably wasn't thinking, where are my gaps? But I was seeing opportunities as, wow, look what I can go and do. And that backfilled that knowledge. But
Yeah,
I
I can only imagine.
certainly, I would say to any young aspiring GMs, go and get as much experience as you can as a number two. Because when you're number one, the buck stops with you. There's
Yeah.
no umbrella. All right, look, there's always going to be an umbrella of a brand around you, but ultimately the buck stops with you. And I would absolutely not change anything about their moves in them deputy GM, resident manager, hotel manager roles. I learned so much in such a short space of time, and it got me to the big job, the dream roles in essence.
Yeah, and being a deputy is a wonderful training ground to the number one job, right? I mean, and it is your opportunity to go and find the shoes that you're supposed to be filling, and find more out about you, and make your mistakes, and and all of these things. Because if you've got a good leader ahead of you, they'll be allowing you to do this.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. And in essence, again, Phil saying that's what we allow our teams to do now, Dakota. It's a go to grow, to make mistakes. We promote young talents. Sometimes maybe a little bit ahead of the time, but we support them in that growth, and that's what's so magic about Dakota, actually. But I'm sure we'll go into that in a moment as well.
Well, that seems like a very good segue, actually, into because you're leaving principal, and
Yeah.
then you're going to Dakota, as you said. You described it as the dream job.
Yeah, listen. At the time, you know when you're ready. You'll probably know yourself. You know when you're ready to take that leap of faith. And I was aware of Dakota in Leeds. One of my colleagues was a chef who worked in Leeds and had introduced me to Dakota many months before, 12 months before the opportunity even arose. And it looked like a brand that I really sort of aligned with. I aligned with the culture. I'd worked when I said worked alongside, Ken McCulloch had just sold Malmaison in sort of the late 90s, dare I say, and off he went to Monaco. But by the time I joined Mal, Ken was this enigma, and Ken was this, we use the word Kenism in the day-to-day that comes now, but Ken had set this brand up in Scotland, and it was a fast-paced brand. Ken, just an incredible guy. So I jumped at the opportunity when Dakota came knocking on the door. I'd had a very candid conversation with David Taylor at the time. I knew the time was right for me, and so I made the leap and never regretted any minute of it, actually. So it's fantastic.
Yeah. How long have you been with Dakota now?
So I joined the brand a year before we went into the pre-opening phase in Manchester. So I joined the brand in March 2018. The hotel opened in May 19, and that was just to allow me to acclimatise, and we'll talk about the owners in a bit more detail later on. But the owners were really committed to getting the flagship right, and committed to get the right person for the GM role, and somebody who knew the city of Manchester. I'd been in and around Manchester for a long time by this point, and I think for me, it just allowed me to come back to a brand that I absolutely aligned with, service focused, magic, fun, light-hearted, all about the people, all about young talent, and the opportunity to go and work with Ken again. And Ken was in his twilight years, and he's retired recently in the last few years, but the time spent with Ken in that year period before pre-opening, I'll never ever forget. Never forget. And
Right.
so inspirational, and everything. He looks at a hotel in a very, very different way than anybody else has ever looked at a hotel that I've worked with. And all about the ambience, the music, the lighting, the temperature, making it right for the guest, focus on the detail, being almost invisible in your service, and ultimately the main answer is doing the simple things really, really brilliantly.
Yeah.
I think one of the Kenisms is, we sell it like a movie. We don't sell it like a hotel. We sell it like a movie. It's that magic. So it was an opportunity to work with Ken. Quite a small structure at Dakota. There's no sort of head office. There's a couple of people that sit in sort of senior roles as an ops director and a founder stroke managing director. So there's no big red tape and big hurdles to jump through whenever you need anything. And I think, it's privately owned, Dakota, by a family. And honestly, Phil, you could not wish for a better owner.
Right.
We have a direct line into the owner, and he,
I mean, it can make or break, right? It can make or
yeah,
break the
anything you need, he's
situation.
there. Yeah, it's all about the guest. It's all about the people. Listen, ultimately, we have to be commercially successful, of course, but the owner will only ever ask me how the guests are, how our people are, how the guests feeling. Are they enjoying? Is it value for money? We still value for money. We still the best. So again, I think ownership was really, really important for me. Time spent with Ken, just incredible. And then it came to May. Well, I should maybe mention February 2019 when my firstborn was born.
Okay.
So a month and a half before the hotel opened, that was an interesting time, Phil. Your firstborn and opening a hotel within 5 weeks was.
Yeah. Did you move house as well? It's
Yeah, I think we moved house in the pandemic. That was another
Okay. Right.
crazy move. But yeah, you can imagine I'm in the hospital and my other half's about to give birth, and I'm on the phone recruiting people and this, that, and the other. So, but you wouldn't have it any other way. Why would you want to go and take 2 weeks paternity leave when you're opening the best hotel in Manchester? You wouldn't. So that probably good that I mentioned that the firstborn came in February 19. Opened at Manchester in May 2019, and the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah. Well, you're now in a regional role.
That's right, yeah.
So, what's your region? What are you looking after?
Yeah, so I opened Manchester as opening GM. Manchester obviously is the flagship. It generates the biggest revenues in the brand, the biggest profits, and ultimately should be seen as listen, the flagship. Really important hotel for the brand. Manchester's a big dynamic city. It was relatively unknown in England, Dakota. We had our Glasgow and our Euro Central hotels, and then our Fourth Bridge just outside Edinburgh. So 3 hotels in Scotland. They came to Leeds in 2017. Opened a hotel there, fantastic hotel, but was relatively still unknown. It was only when Manchester came along that Manchester really made a big splash. We'd gone from punching above our weight in Scotland and in Leeds for a long time to being quite a credible operation once you've opened in Manchester and cemented your place there. So I opened the hotel as GM. Lots and lots of industry recognition. We landed, as number 1 on TripAdvisor 3 or 4 weeks after we opened Manchester, and it's been there ever since. I think we had one day as number 2 recently, but that's
God! But it
that was a challenging
called a
day
meeting
already.
that day. Yeah.
Glad to let everyone know that we are back as number 1 now. Plenty of industry recognition. We've had an Acorn winner in Katie Forrest who won an Acorn. We had the Restaurant Manager of the Year finalist in 2020 in Tom, our restaurant manager. And then I think last year, a couple of Hotel Katie nominations. Sam Carl was Hotel Restaurant Chef of the Year, and Tom again nominated as Food and Beverage Manager of the Year. And then Katie nominee this year as Best Employee in Hospitality. So we've landed as best in the top 15 best employers in hospitality for 3 years running. But this year we've landed, I think, don't misquote me on this, Lisa Jenkins will kill me if I get this wrong, but I think we're in the top 6, and I'm down to London tomorrow at the People Summit, and we'll hope that we've come number 1 and won a Katie in July. So we'll see. So it's plenty of recognition. Fantastic business, unbelievable business, and I can say, it's a real team effort. It's not a dictatorship. It's collaborative. We sit down together. We talk together. It's not the Matt Townley show. I can promise you that. There's plenty of strong characters around me that probably think it's their show actually. So that allowed me to spend time in the community, in schools, colleges, etc. And then the pandemic hit 10 months later, which was pretty cruel actually, because Manchester had a real great launch to the market. It was doing superbly well, surpassing anything we expected in that first sort of 10 months. Pandemic hits, big problem. And then coming out of the pandemic, some people had left the business, and the opportunity was there actually for me to go and take on Leeds as well, just after we reopened in 2021. So I jumped at the chance. thought that'd be a big learning curve for me to take on two properties, so
Yeah.
Manchester and Leeds. So I currently look after the two English properties as regional operations director, and that takes us to today.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I want to give you a round of applause, man. It's a hell of a journey. It is a hell of a journey, and I suppose in many ways, because what you say you're 37 now.
Yeah.
So you're still a young man. You've still got a hell of a lot to give, I would imagine. But it feels like you've found a home, as it were.
Yeah.
And that definitely comes across. It once again, I come back to energy. I don't think you can act with energy if you are not in a place that allows you to be like that allows you to be yourself, that allows you to impart what you've learnt along the way.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what Dakota allows me to do is to be who I am, to lead the team in the way I like to lead the team, with a real feeling of, if you do drop a ball along the way, that it will be caught. It's quite a young, dynamic brand with expansion plans, in the pipeline as we speak. But actually, that whole make people feel good about making people feel good is something that we live and die by every day. We turn every corner. We make our team feel the best they can feel in order to make our guests feel good. And I think that's all it comes down to, Phil. Dakota is absolutely magic. When you spend time with Ken and you listen to Ken, and that at the forefront of everything we do is that culture of service, and you should step through the front doors of a Dakota Hotel and be transported to anywhere you want. Manhattan, Mayfair, Manchester, wherever you want to be. We're quite fun and quite light-hearted, but there's a very serious siege mentality in this hotel, and certainly in Manchester, that we've embedded into that open. And you only get one chance to open a hotel. You don't get two chances. I mean, some of my colleagues in Manchester, they get two chances. I can think of Paul Bayliss at Hotel Brooklyn. He opened his hotel twice because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
We always laugh about that, but you only get one chance to set that tone from the off. Phil. You don't get two chances. You can't sit at home and work sort of 8 till 4:30 and expect everybody else to be at the at the coal face and delivering your hospitality. So really important that you get it right from the off, and I think that's what we essentially did, get it right from the off in this hotel. But certainly you think about Ken, you think about everything he says about us selling it like a movie. I found my place because I feel really, really comfortable in this brand. I feel really comfortable where the brand's going to grow and expand, and we've got succession and pipeline opportunities for our people. And ultimately, so long as we do continue to grow, I'm very, very happy where I am.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you would potentially be a benefactor of any future growth in any way, but you can never know, right? I mean, but certainly for now, there is, here's another cliche, there is only this moment, right? So it seems like in this moment you are exactly where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just realized that Jurgen Klopp says in this moment a lot. So there's there's a little Liverpool drop in as well. Yeah. But no, cool. So actually, a quick question around that. You mentioned that you had your firstborn in 2019. How do you manage? It's because you've just mentioned as well, you're kind of a lead from the front. If you're, I assume that there are moments where you have to go away and do the family thing and all of that sort of stuff. But how do you manage that? How do you get the best out of that situation?
So it probably depends who you're going to ask. If you're asking me that question, I'm going to give you a very different answer to my missus. But in essence, right, hospitality is a tough gig. You can't be clock watching. The minute you clock watch, the minute you're done. I've got a very, very supportive home life. My father instilled in me work ethic, and I certainly inherited his work ethic. He worked until he died a couple of years ago. He worked 7 days a week for 25 years. So that work ethic is ingrained in me. So ultimately, what that means is, do I strike the work-life balance cliche? Probably not. However, you've got to pick your moment. Like you say, pick your moments. If it's quiet on a Wednesday evening at 5 o'clock and you can get out the door, brilliant. However, my life includes Saturdays in work, late nights, overnights, nights in Leeds, nights in Manchester, entertaining our clients. So in essence, it's probably always something in the back of my mind that, you probably have to spend a bit more time at home. But, when you're doing something you love, this is your life as well. So in essence, if you have a day off, fantastic. You have 2 days off, it's an absolute bonus. And on them days off, your phone might ring, etc., etc. And some people will go and find that balance themselves. Everybody has their own tipping point. And what is your tipping point where you need to switch off and go on holiday and spend some absolute quality time at home? I find that time. I'm sure my missus would tell me I don't find enough of that time. But ultimately, what makes a successful business is by the person who sets the tone, sets the energy, sets the pace, is seen late at night and early in the morning, and every time throughout the day in the middle. What's really good is about this brand is we don't really have offices in inverted commas for GMs or anybody who doesn't essentially need an office. So I will be based from the floor in the bar in the grills, talking to the team in the kitchen, or usually you'll find me at 9 o'clock in the morning. I'll be with housekeeping. That's when they do their briefing with the housekeepers. So I know that at that time, for 25 minutes of my day, that's spent with the housekeepers. I'll catch up with the breakfast chef, usually at 7:45 in the morning. And then, you might catch up with the hotel manager at 8 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock at night, whatever that might be. So I'm probably not the best example of finding a work-life balance, but my home life allows me to really submerge myself into the culture of the business, and that's what's really exciting about this brand.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's probably two things in play there. One, communication is the cornerstone of any successful relationship, right? So I'm assuming that your missus understands what it takes to be successful in the space that you're operating in. Well, we'll maybe have a separate conversation with her about that at some point.
Please do.
Please, no, please don't. I thought you were going to say that. And the second point is that you found something that you love to do. So that's another cliche, but you're doing something that doesn't actually feel like work, because for you it's not a job, it's a lifestyle. It is part of your lifestyle, and that's the secret to happiness. I think
there's never a time for a cliche, Phil.
Oh, there's never a bad time for a cliche.
Let's drop this one in. If you enjoy what you do, you'll never work a day in your life.
Fantastic. Yes. In fact, I think Stephen might have said that one actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You're not the first with that one.
It's a great cliche.
Well, but cliches are little snippets of wisdom, aren't they? They are just exactly that. But it's that to me sounds like you're the role model here, because you've found something that ignites you and gets you up to go to work, because it doesn't feel like work. As I say, it's more of a lifestyle, and I think that's absolutely key. But I think the other key thing with this is that mentality might not come to you on day one of starting your career, and generally speaking, the more knowledge you go out and get about your craft, the more natural things come to you, the more you feel like you've found your space.
Yeah, and it becomes easier, doesn't it, Phil? Because what happens then is let's just take today, for example, after we finish now, Wednesday's really the commercial day. Wednesday's the day when we look at what's happening in the businesses. We look at the payroll level. Have we got the right amount of payroll? We're not a business that looks at a P&L from the bottom up. We look at a P&L from the top down. Have we got enough people, enough team members on the rosters to deliver unbelievable service? So Wednesday's a real commercial day. We look at payroll, we look at forecasts, we look at previous month, we look at next week, etc., etc., etc. But what that allows me to do is go and spend, maybe evolve my role slightly. We've got a hotel manager in Manchester, we've got a hotel manager in Leeds, but it allows us to really embed ourselves into community that we touched on earlier. So we've got sort of collaborations in this hotel. I think we're the only hotel that's signed up to Greater Manchester's Good Employment Charter, with Andy Burnham, who's on everyone's lips at the moment. Yep. We partner with charities, so Reach Out, which is a mentoring charity for children from challenge backgrounds.
Right.
We've got a mini sort of relationship, almost a mini curriculum with the Co-op Academy in Swindon, whereby we are their nominated school through the Manchester Hoteliers Association. We regularly put on evenings at Tameside College, the other side of town. So that allows us to spend, more time doing the right things. These are the right things to do to inspire young people into our industry. And I take great pride in the amount of time I actually spend dealing with community, schools, colleges, charity. Dare I even mention the Institute of Hospitality, where I chair the Northwest region of the Institute of Hospitality. So Dakota allow me to go and do that as well, which is just a great place to be. It's like a Disney role, might you say?
Yeah, well, I mean, the IOH is your wider community, isn't it, of hospitality?
Yeah.
That's, so that still feeds into that community spirit element. But that this is something that is becoming more and more apparent to me the more conversations I have with people, and I've been lucky enough, as you know, to speak to quite a wide section of people from the industry, and there are people who just inspire me on a day-to-day basis. And I'm going to bring up Danny Peccarelli once
Yeah.
again, just because of I have had this theory in the back of my head for a long time about business lost its way for quite a long time in terms of why it's there in the first place. And it's, for a long time, it's been about the cash.
Yeah.
Profit's important in business without question, but the use of that profit has been misdirected and it's out of balance a little bit. And now, if you're wanting to be an employer who people want to get on board with and want to come and work for, you've got to be thinking about what are you doing with your profit?
Mm-hmm.
As in, what are we doing to save the world? What are we doing to save our local community? What are we doing to just make things better and not just about lining shareholders' pockets, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not getting into a political debate on that, because I do believe that profit is massively important. There is no business without it, right? But it's about finding the balance.
Mm.
The people who take the risk to start the business in the first place should be rewarded for that risk, but not for the sake of everything else. Anyway,
Yeah.
that's my rant over for the
That's
day.
good. Listen, you apply that to our industry. One of the biggest challenges is stakeholder management in UK hospitality. You got venture capitalists, you got private owners. Everybody has a different objective. People need return on investment in some industry, in some companies,
Yeah.
and that you have to align yourself with that brand. If you want to go and work for a brand that is owned by a venture capitalist, then that's fantastic. But be prepared to spend more time at the sharp end, looking at your P&L and making sure you're delivering that objective for your owner.
Mm.
I chose this brand in the moment in time that we were in, working for an owner that was absolutely focused on delivering the best service delivery in the city that he opens hotels in. So ultimately, you have to do your research, is what I would say to anybody. Go if you want to be really sharp, challenged commercially, you can go down one route. If you want to go and work for a privately owned company that generally understand that repeat guest is so important to the P&L, then choose that company as well. But for sure, listen, we all have to run a commercial business. We all have to be commercially successful.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, as you know, as the GM, if you're not running a commercial business, you're not the GM anymore. It's straightforward as that. But people have a choice as well, right?
Yeah. And but there is a company out there for everyone, right? I think that's the key point, and vice versa. So yeah, cool. Right. I think it's story time, which is not something I've historically called this section of the show, but yeah, from your career so far, and just knowing that the type of person that you are, there's got to be some stories
There is some stories indeed. We'll keep them clean,
that you
right?
can share. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
clean is fine. We have had some unclean stories on the show, but it's all about your reputation here, Matt. So
Yeah.
you have to make sure you
Tarnished
walk away
already,
with.
Phil, so, yeah. The funniest story that sticks out in my mind, there's a couple actually. I've got one about Ken. So the first one about Ken.
Well, he's
You have
retired now,
to
so safe.
Yeah,
That's
you've got to
safe.
know Ken, but I'm in a competitor hotel with Ken one afternoon, and we're just waxing lyrical about all things hospitality and service, and how good's the coffee, how bad's this and that. And Ken just comes out and says, "Wow, these guys really know how to put the hospital in hospitality, don't they?" And that is synonymous with Ken, and that is a really good Kenism. But I think one of the funniest moments I've ever had in my career, and at the time it wasn't that funny, let me tell you, Phil, was probably take you back to Mottram Hall. So it was probably 2013, maybe 2014, and we had an ex James Bond staying with us, and I won't name his name. Won't name his name
I
or
mean,
his wife's
it's
name.
quite a narrow list
Well,
straight
an
away.
ex, yeah, there's not that many of them. So
No.
an ex James Bond, and he and his wife had been followed by the paparazzi. They were performing somewhere locally. I think it was Buxton Theatre, if I'm not mistaken. Paparazzi come down the drive. We get them into the room overnight. Really look after them, and it comes to the next day and it's departure time. So James Stewart, being James Stewart, leads from the front. We all have to be ready at the bedroom door, ready to see Mr. Bond and his wife out of the hotel. And me being a overzealous resident manager at the time, 24 years of age, 25 years of age, I was there front and centre, ready to play concierge, take the bags to the blacked out vehicle outside, and away they'd go. But I remember there was a queue of us. The corridor was quite narrow, so there was resort managing director, me as resident manager, and then I think maybe the conference and banquet manager, and certainly the director of sales, Emma, was there as well. And the door opens, and Mr. Bond, who will remain nameless for now, points to the luggage, etc., etc. And me being that overzealous 24-year-old, straight into the room, grabs the first suitcase in my right hand that I can, and yank it up to transport it out. Unbeknownst to me, Mrs. Bond hasn't tied the suitcase up. So as I pull the suitcase off the floor into midair, the bottom of the suitcase just flaps open.
Oh, no.
And as you can imagine, all of the contents fall out, including her knickers, all of her medicine. And I just remember hearing a cry from the corner of, "Oh no!" And you just want the world to eat you and just swallow you up and just disappear. But that was certainly one of the most embarrassing moments of my career. I should have just been a little bit more calculated, a bit slower in what I was going to do. But yeah, I'll never, ever forget that day. And to this day now, we look back at that moment and I'm going red actually talking to you.
I know. I can kind of feel your pain. I think we've all had moments like that, right, where you just, oh God, what have I just done?
Yeah.
Exactly. And do you know what? What I love about that story more than anything else is that I thought that was absolutely nailed on. That you were going to say that you're at this kind of welcoming line, and Mr. Bond came up to you and you said something like, "I've been expecting you," or something like that. That's what I thought. That's the obvious joke, isn't it? But no, that's a cracker. Yeah, but these are inevitable things that happen, right? As part of your growth and development, you'll never rush into a room again and just pick up a case overzealously without checking everything first, right?
Some might say I'll never touch a suitcase ever again, Phil. Who knows?
Yeah, well, I'm lucky enough to have a wife who loves to pack, so she's like, I'll take care of the packing. That's fine by me.
Yeah,
great stuff. Well, I mean, I'm just a little bit conscious of time, but what would you say are your top 3 reasons why somebody should come and join hospitality?
So I'd say, first and foremost, the first reason I'd say you're going to be part of people's best moments. And that's really magic. Birthdays, weddings, bar mitzvahs. If you've got a real, true love and passion for people, how lucky are we to be involved in people's best moments? Obviously, you're involved in people's worst moments as well. I get that, but being part of people's best moments. If you go and work for Barclaycard and sat in an office, you're not really going to be part of people's most celebrated, memorable moments. So I think for me, that's one. I think the other one would be, I'd use the word opportunity. So you can grow a career in seconds. You can be far-reaching, diverse. You can be a chef. You can be in HR, a GM, finance, home, abroad. Budget, luxury. You can forge the path that you're going to go on. But my advice on that note would be, find an employer who aligns with you. That is the most important thing there. And I think the third thing, and we've touched on it a couple of times. Another reason to join hospitality is community. I like to talk to people, and I like to, be out and about and surround yourself with like-minded people, all over the world. Manchester's a good example. We are absolutely collaborative, with the Manchester Hoteliers Association. That is our community of hotels in Manchester, and that community. That there's no better feeling than being in an underprivileged community, but we're actually flying the hospitality flag in a community in Manchester, and that's a really important thing. So for me, being part of people's best moments, being involved in a community, and the opportunities are endless.
Yeah, and I always just add in the fun, because you're a great exponent of that as well, and it kind of should go without saying, I suppose, but this industry is an awful lot of fun.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Fantastic. Great stuff. Well, if people want to get a hold of you to learn about you or Dakota and where you're going next, what's the best method for them to do that?
Best thing is LinkedIn, Matt Townley, but certainly drop me an email anytime. It's mt@dakotahotels.co.uk.
Fantastic. And I have to say that there's a lesson actually that others could learn from you in how to deal with recruiters when they're knocking on your door. Because I've always remembered you dealt with me wonderfully professionally, but with personality and fun. And I've always remembered that, and I've always greatly respected you for that. So you're an absolute shining light for this industry. And in fact, I probably should end with this. This will embarrass you. So
No.
I had a quick gander on your LinkedIn profile before we turned on the microphone. There's a lovely endorsement from Kelly Rickson.
All right.
Matt is a hospitality operator who represents everything that's great with our industry. I think that sums you up absolutely perfectly. Thank you so much for everything you do, and thank you so much for being that energy that the industry needs.
Brilliant. Thanks, Phil.
No worries at all. Take care.
And there we have it. I was thrilled to get some time with Matt, and he is a great example to anyone as to what can happen to you when you have a great ethic, enjoy what you do, and have a thirst for learning. We wish him continued success. We will, of course, be back next Wednesday with another cracking story from hospitality. So until then, thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.